Welcome, everyone, to Vision Untethered, conversations with inspirational visionary leaders. Too often, business owners find themselves tethered down, held back by their businesses. We authentically unpack the biggest mistakes in business and in life, strategies to overcome them, and we identify the saboteurs that keep many visionary founders held back and tied down. Today's guest is Samson Jagoras, the visionary founder of Clearly Acquired, a company revolutionizing the way entrepreneurs scale and sell their businesses. With years of experience as a seasoned entrepreneur, investor, and business strategist, Samson empowers business owners to exit their team on their terms by leveraging his experience in acquisitions and business growth. Today, we will dive into his journey, insights on scaling for success, and how he's helping leaders maximize their business value while preparing for a game-changing exit. Samson, so excited to have you here.
Thanks, Jill. Super pumped.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, always starting out, I start first with your purpose and your passion. So, how did your initial vision and passion lead you to where you are today and where Clearly Acquired is today?
My life literally makes no sense. I'm a blue collar kid from California who was raised on punk rock, sports, had never really been around business or entrepreneurship. I had a dad who was a solopreneur at best, maybe. He was a carpenter and a couple times launched his own contracting business. But when I was about 14 years old, I discovered football and it set me on this journey that,
Mm,
if you put your mind to something, you can effectively accomplish it. And, for what we lacked in money, my dad definitely instilled in me that belief in like the true American dream, the capitalistic view, right? You got to put the feet in faith is what we say. And
hmm
so I found football that took me on a journey where I played at a Division two school. Thought I wanted to be
mm,
like orthopedics or strength and conditioning or something like that. When I
yeah.
transferred to the University of Colorado my sophomore year, that's when I met my now wife, and I met her dad, who was for the first time in my life a like what I would call a real entrepreneur. He had never had a job, never went to college, never did any of that.
Mm, okay.
And so expanded my mind greatly to what the possibilities and the opportunities were. And so I ended up graduating with a degree in human physiology on a Friday from the University of Colorado. And I walked into a futures and commodities trading brokerage on the following Monday. For those of you who don't know what that is, we're talking, gold, oil and gas,
hmm
pigs, cattle, etc.
Right.
6 months before graduation, I didn't even know what a commodity or a future was. That was right around when Bear Stearns was collapsing. And then
Mm,
3 months later, after I graduated and I became a Series 3 broker, I was sitting on a trading desk when the Dow Jones fell 777 points, which set off the economic housing crisis. But that
yeah.
baptized me in the deep end of business, finance. And that's where I really just grew to love this whole world of entrepreneurship. And it's unlike any other investment, right? Like you have this ability to control your future, create something that exists from nothing,
Yeah.
and be rewarded handsomely for it. So fast forward to circa 2009, we're in the middle of a pretty bad recession. And from that trading firm, we broke off and we started a business company called Madwire, which is here in Colorado.
hmm
I ended up probably about 3 years into trading. Madwire was starting to pick up. I was ready to leave the trading industry because we were doing a bunch of managed money. And that sounds great. It's like, oh, wow, managed money, wealth management, trading systems. It's cool until you're waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning to watch the coffee market open and you realize this quality of life can't persist, right? Just constant
Mm,
stress from Sunday night all the way through to Friday. You get one day to kind of relax, and the commodity markets are
yeah.
super volatile. So I was going to go be a financial planner. And that's when I got
Okay.
asked to come run strategy over at Madwire. And so we
hmm
successfully grew that company from about the time I started, I think we were doing like 5, maybe 6 million top line to about a
hmm
100 million top line over the course of 10 years.
Yeah.
I helped
Incredible.
build 4 or 5 departments, which include recruiting, training, sales, marketing, and some of the software.
hmm
And then I ended up stepping out of that, getting full tilt into just private equity. raising money, putting together deals in real estate business. And that's when I kind of, so I'll say, stumbled upon the inefficiencies of the lower middle market, which
Yeah.
is really what the catalyst was for Clearly Acquired, which was how do you better connect buyers, brokers, and lenders to actually transact and facilitate transactions closing. Because the
Hmm.
fundamental mistake or error in the space is people are set on their price and their terms without including the bank, who's the largest investor in the deal. And they
Yeah.
can't ever sell the business because it's overpriced and nobody can finance the deal. If you can't finance the business, nobody's going to write you a check for $5 or even $10 million. And
Hmm.
so that is the most crucial element to ensuring that a company sells. There's 40,000 businesses that sell every single year, and 90% of them have less than 5 million in revenue. So the majority of the
Yep.
market is selling somewhere between 250 to 10 million. And so, yeah, we're on a mission to fix that. It's a
Okay.
huge, challenging, pioneering mission because traditionally that's not the way that it's done. There's really none of the marketplace makers have any skin in the game. They're
Yeah.
just connecting people and just kind of, standing aside.
Yeah. So in that pivotal moment, right, of recognizing the market need for something like Clearly Acquired, how did that shape your vision and what do you see stepping into that and providing that need now and how that can change the landscape of private equity and acquisitions, mergers, exit?
Yeah. So I'm smarter now. This wasn't my first rodeo, right? I had a couple businesses under my belt. Hindsight being
Yeah.
2020.
Hmm.
I just knew that a lot of founders early days are really scared to give up equity or admit that they're weak in a certain area. And we're kind of conditioned our whole life to we need to figure out how to do stuff. And I once read a book called Who Not How. If you haven't
Hmm.
read it, it's an exceptional book. And that changed my whole perspective is I don't need to figure out how. I just need to organize the
Mm.
team that can go execute on this, which ultimately what I realized as a visionary was my ultimate superpower is I can see talents in people that they don't even recognize that they have. And I can kind
Yeah.
of see what the different players are and who they need to be to kind of come together to do it. So that was my very first move was
Hmm.
I need a chief technology officer. I mean, I can talk about this stuff till I'm blue in the face. I couldn't write a lick of code, you know?
Yeah.
So that was crucial. The lending
Right.
component, I needed to bring somebody who really understood the lending component in, which I knew a good deal about. So I brought that guy in. Then I needed a chief marketing officer, and then I needed somebody to help with UX, UI, and brand.
Right.
And so, forming the founding team was like step number one, and then everything else after that is just like pure execution. So,
Hmm.
missionally, you can have a great vision, right? Like we could sit here and pontificate about the best ideas in the
Right.
world. There's a whole graveyard of great ideas that were never fully executed or never matured into something of meaning, right?
Exactly.
And so we committed to bootstrapping the business for the last 18 months, knowing full well that selling an idea without real skin in the game is not going to
Hmm.
happen. And so
Hmm.
now we're at the stage now where we have enough brand, enough experience, enough traction that we're ready to go and raise some money and scale this thing into becoming like a market leader. But I guess
Amazing.
the lesson being like for all the listeners is you grossly overestimate what you can do in a year, and you undervalue 3 to 5 years of consistent action. More importantly,
Mm.
moving in the right direction with the right team, right? It's really easy to
Yeah.
confuse motion and progress. And sometimes early success is a bad thing because you come out thinking that like you're just so dope and
Hmm.
everybody should listen to what you have to say. But it's actually better to I think Jeff Bezos was the one that said slow is smooth, smooth is fast, which is really a military quote.
Yeah.
But
Right.
so yeah,
So
we
applicable,
we've been very slow and intentionally slow, which is
but
hard when
smooth.
you're building software because there's no revenue, right?
Mm.
But I think
Consistency and the
next time I
progress over perfecting it early.
next time I come on the pod, I'll have some cool things to share with you about what we're working on in the background right now.
Ooh, I'd love it. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I'm really eager to see what you've built. Yeah. So, as far as that strength in people and who, not how,
Yeah.
aside from the area of expertise that each of them serve, knowing exactly what type of person and their skill set, their competency beyond anything you could bring, what characteristics are you looking for in people when building your team? And how do you ensure every single one of those individuals shares an execution of that vision?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it starts with just values, right? How we see the world. Very similar
Mm-hmm.
to a marriage, right? You have to align in
Mm-hmm.
your faith, how you think about finances, how you think about politics. Um, and so we're all the founders are very aligned there.
Yeah.
So that's step one, because if you can't get along, because you're maybe politically divided and people are like, oh, that shouldn't matter in business, but I promise you it does, right? When one of your partners posts something that doesn't align with your core values, like, are you guys going to be at odds?
Mm-hmm.
And then just what kind of company do we want to build? We've been four of the founders, we've all worked together. We all worked together at Madwire in our previous life. And so we had a
Okay.
lot of history together. That's also important, when you go raise money, people are thinking
Mm-hmm.
about how well do you guys get along? Have you done this before?
Right.
And so I can easily say that, like, hey, these were all key players in building this company that went to 100 million in top line rev. And then the fourth partner, him and I have been doing deals together in real estate and business acquisition for a very long time. So that was the crucial part initially, was just like alignment of values, alignment of skill sets, alignment of experience and understanding the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then from there, we sat down as a group and said, hey, what are our core values together? So if you actually go on our site, you'll see we actually built an acronym off the word clear that really stands for what we're all about. And and so we
Yeah.
live that by that, we hire by that, we fire by that.
Absolutely.
And even assess potential investors by that.
Yeah. People you work with, vendors,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It becomes a standard across anyone we come in contact with because good business comes from aligning, whether it's internally in the team, externally, clients we serve, other business entities we partner with, all comes down to those values
Yeah.
together and sharing them. Absolutely. Yeah. So, what role does acquisitions play in shaping Clearly Acquired's future? And I'm curious how your approach to acquisitions differ from other traditional methods, how you're disrupting that in the market by your methodology.
Traditionally, the marketplace is really driven by business brokers who,
Yeah.
the large majority of them are, I'll say, sales and marketing people. They're
Hmm.
not necessarily finance people. Those are very different things, right? A finance person is going to analyze the deal much differently than, say, a business broker would. And so one of the fundamental problems
Hmm.
is we back into a price based off of a multiple that gives us the highest potential value, right? Because there's multiple ways to value one business, multiple
Hmm.
methods, and they might, have a disparity between them by a million bucks, right?
Hmm.
5 million versus a $4 million valuation. Well, of course, the business owner is always going to want to take the highest number. Of course, the broker is going to want to take the highest number because it's where they're going to get the biggest payday. But
Right.
all the marketplaces that are out there today don't do anything to qualify the deal itself to see if it's actually something that somebody can close on. So instead, it's kind of like Craigslist is the general standard. It's like anybody can throw whatever they want out there, whatever price, based off of absolutely
Right.
nothing other than a feeling.
Hmm.
And then on the other side of the token, you have buyers who tend to come to the ecosystem with great intentions, and they think that the bank that they're working with is the right bank because they're all treated like residential real estate, like they all pretty much offer the same thing, and that could not
Hmm.
be further than from the truth, right?
Yeah.
Banks are like neurosurgeons, at least in the SBA and acquisition space. And so if you need a specialist to help you do this transaction, You wouldn't come to the deal and say, well, I don't need a neurosurgeon. I already have a general
Mhm.
practitioner. You would say, no, I want to go find the best neurosurgeon in the world to help you accomplish the goal. And so
Exactly.
that's what we're doing, right? Is we're connecting those credit boxes with the deals and with the buyers to put lenders, buyers, and brokers in
Hmm.
better communication with term sheets and deal structures that we know can close. And so
Right.
as a byproduct that we are able to facilitate more transactions, right? A lot of marketplaces are just really proud of look at all the listings that we have. It's like, well, that means
Hmm.
nothing. How many of those actually sold? And how many of them
Exactly.
actually sold at the price that they went to market for?
Hmm.
And what was the actual terms in the deal structure? How many times did you have to drop the price in
Yep.
order to get there? Did it sit there
Yeah.
for 2 years, or was the deal able to get done in 60 to 90 days? That's a
Yeah.
totally different conversation. And so that's who we want to be. If we want brokers and buyers to know, hey, if I have a deal and I need it sized up for debt, or if I have a
Hmm.
deal that I want to get in front of a qualified buyer with a structured term sheet and banks like saying I'm ready to go, that they would
Hmm.
go to Clearly Acquired.
Yeah. All over about the quality over the quantity,
100%.
quantifying, the deals that are sitting out there doesn't speak at all to the quality of those terms, the quality of that, the livelihood of that business owner after all of those things are just behind the veil, behind the curtain.
Well, and think about it like this. I would say 75% of people who go to buy a business are doing it for the first time. They
Yeah.
don't they don't have a
Yeah.
private equity background. They don't know how
Hmm.
to underwrite the deal. They don't even really know how the banks are probably going to think about it. And
Exactly.
so they get financials and they get a confidential investment memorandum,
Yeah.
and then they start negotiating price and terms based off of like what they think is face value. And
Yeah.
then they go to the bank and they're rudely awakened that those price and terms will never work.
Hmm.
And so it's like, why would we even leave it up to a first time buyer to go figure that out, or even a
Right.
first time seller or an incompetent broker to figure it out?
Hmm.
Let's get the
Hmm.
bank involved straight away with
Yeah.
with a term sheet that we know that the bank will underwrite and close on.
Hmm. Absolutely. Getting all the players involved as early as possible
Yes.
in the game.
Everybody has told me that, like, why do you want to play in this part of the market, right? 250 to 10 million, like go upstream, get into the 50 to the 100 to the 200, right?
Mm.
The deals are more lucrative, right? The
Hmm.
buyers are more sophisticated. And the answer to that is sure, that would be great. Agree with you, but the real opportunity exists in solving the inefficiency in the lower part of the lower middle market or even Main Street.
Hmm.
It and the technology has come along far enough for us to be able to do that. Just nobody's paying attention to it, right?
Right.
But small business, small to medium sized business is 70% of the economy. It's
Hmm.
46% of all the jobs, right? And so
And
to
completely
me,
untapped
correct,
because,
because nobody wants to spend the time doing it. Like you have M&A
hmm.
guys who don't really understand the tech side, right?
Mm.
And they don't understand how to facilitate that whole entire ecosystem, or to them, it's maybe brain damage. Cool.
Hmm.
I'm a unicorn in the sense that I understand M&A, understand the lending and the financing, and I have
Yeah.
the technology background and the resources to go and build the
Yeah.
solution. Right?
Yeah.
I almost
Yeah.
have to at this point. I'm like forced to. I'm required to.
Hmm. Well, and there's a unique differentiator in that in a problem that you solve no one else is solving at the moment, right within that lower to middle market, where the majority of those businesses are, and the majority of them owned by a generation that's going to be exiting sooner than they will ever get to the point where they're in that top tier to be
Yep.
served accordingly. So,
Yeah, you got it. I mean,
yeah.
vast majority of businesses, like we said, are not 90% of them are not doing over 5 million in revenue. So
Mhm. And the ownership of those businesses from the boomer generation now aging themselves out basically of ownership are going to be forced into exit at that point. Where do they go
yeah,
and what are their options, right? So I'm curious with talking to value and valuation and how so much of the intangible asset value in the business, and we're talking, the capital in its people, the founder dependency, customer capital, the brand, right? And all of those factors. How does being overly tethered to a business affect that long-term value in cases you've seen, transactions you've been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, I have two thoughts on that. The first one is the more involved the owner is, or ownership is, or the brand relies on them, or the relationships rely on them, the greater the discount, right? Because what happens, the odds of the next person who buying your business having the industry relationships and experience that you do are
Hmm.
very, very low.
Hmm.
Now it's possible, and maybe somebody will strategically come in and acquire you because they want your market share or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but I think of it like this: like if every person that could potentially buy your business is sitting inside of a soccer stadium, and your business is the soccer ball, the more specific skill set, the more specific um, like relationship, education, esoteric knowledge that is required in order to run the business, the less people are sitting in that stadium, right? Really,
Yeah.
what you're waiting for is a unicorn, which is like basically just the people sitting in the front row of the soccer stadium to come and buy your business. Do you
Hmm.
want that, or do you want a whole entire stadium full, right? Because you have strategic buyers, you have owner operators, you have financial buyers. And so I want all of those people to have an opportunity to buy my business. So I need to position it in a way that it can operate without me. It's truly an asset. And if that person steps in and
Hmm.
they want to own operate it, awesome. But if not, and they're just a purely financial buyer and they love what I've built, by
Yeah.
all means, man, like buy the business. That
Hmm.
said, the other fatal mistake that people make is they way overvalue their brand, or they way overvalue their growth. And
Hmm.
the only thing I can say to that is if your brand is so great and your relationships are so awesome, then why isn't the business more profitable?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't get money for future value that you haven't created. That's
Right.
why you're selling the business. Because if it's so great, that
Hmm.
enterprise value is so great, then why don't you go do it? Right? Why
Hmm.
don't you go take it from 20% margins to 40% margins if you think that's possible? Because
Hmm.
you're incapable of doing it. So you don't get to charge me for your incompetency.
Hmm.
Um, I get to
Yeah.
come. That's the value that I add, right? I'm coming here to put money to work, roll up my sleeves, and go run and grow this company into something else.
Hmm.
And so,
Absolutely.
like, heartbreak moment for everybody. Your business is not worth what you think it is. And then I would say the third fatal mistake is people just running their company like a small business owner. Like, oh my, I
Hmm.
run my phone bill through there, and I bought a truck through, like, a personal vehicle through there, or I decided
Mm.
to do my whatever kitchen rehab through my construction company, which materially changes the top line revenue numbers and the profit margins, right? Because you're not actually
Hmm.
charging yourself a full profit margin on that. And so
Right.
those kinds of things come out eventually.
Yeah.
And so if you already know that, then be honest with yourself, and you
Hmm.
need to remove that from the adjusted EBITDA. You need to remove that from the P&Ls, and you need to be forthright with that as you're going to sell the business, because the worst thing that can happen is if you do not move forward in good faith and somebody does buy your business off of some sort of projected thing that's not even real,
Yeah.
you are going to get sued, and all the money that you think you just rode off into the sunset with will be gone.
Hmm.
So it doesn't pay to try to dupe somebody.
No.
So selling your business starts well before you ever think about selling it, right? It's
Exactly.
systems,
Well,
processes.
that's my next question then. You already segued us so beautifully, right? When does that start? When should that be top of mind?
Day one, honestly, for me.
Hmm.
Seasoned entrepreneurs know that. Day one, they're doing everything in their power to there's everybody thinks about scaling a company as like vertical, but I think
Right.
about scaling as horizontal and vertical. So you have to go horizontal, scale horizontally, which is people, processes, systems, technology, um, values, meetings, all that stuff need to be in place Once it's
Hmm.
in place, then the business can start to scale this way. And then you'll hit
Yep.
another blockage where you have to reassess. You've executed on your plan or your vision, and now you have
Hmm.
to go horizontal again, and then you can start scaling vertically. And so
Hmm.
it starts day one. But if you haven't done that, you do have an older business or a business, a more mature business has been around, and you are considering selling, you probably got, if you don't have any of that stuff in place, a good 2 years ahead of you before you're even ready to take that
Hmm.
leap. And so other things to consider that like everybody wants to sell their business when it's having its best year,
Hmm.
right? It's like, well, what did the last 3 years look like?
Sure.
And why is that
Yeah.
important? It's important because that's what the bank is going to look at. And that's what
Hmm.
the next buyer is going to be able to finance against. So it's great you did $1 million. So the average of that is you're doing like 600, right?
Hmm.
And so
Exactly.
it's just preparing to sell starts well before you're actually ready. So you need to have the right people on your team. You need to be talking to the M&A consultants and the attorneys and the valuation experts and the
Hmm.
brokers, and you need to be getting your business sized up for debt, understanding who is the next buyer, what do they
Yeah.
need, and how do I get my house in order to help them.
Hmm. Exactly. What do you say then to the population of business owners that will never exit, will never sell? That's an event that I don't need to prepare for now. That's, far distant future. So why talk about it right now? Why invest the energy to think in that mindset?
Well, the first fundamental error is assuming that an exit means you're going to sell your business,
Hmm.
right? There's multiple
Yeah.
ways to exit your business. The very first one is to install a president or a CEO and cash flow your business in perpetuity, right? Why not treat your business like an asset? It can easily just be printing cash flow. So if you haven't read a book called The Self-Managing Company, I highly recommend it. Right?
That's
Freedom of
good.
time,
Hmm.
freedom of money, freedom of relationship, and then freedom of purpose. So you've spent 10, 15 years of your life to build this cash flow monster, and
Hmm.
you're afraid to give up an extra $300,000 a year to put a CEO in, and you'll just maybe collect 700 instead of 300 this year. But 700 over the next 10, 15, 20 years, while you're going and whatever, building churches or doing more in your community, is a form of an exit, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to work anymore. The second way is, you could franchise it, you could convert it to an ESOP, you could license the product, you could merge, you could start acquiring other companies, or you could sell. So
Hmm.
my first question when somebody tells me they want to sell is like, why and are you sure?
Hmm.
Like, what else are you going to be doing?
Hmm.
And because when it gets to the closing table and they have a
Yeah.
real offer, and maybe they've been making 500, $600,000 a year, $1 million a year, $2 million a year,
Right.
sure, they're gonna walk away with a lump sum, but 5 million ain't gonna last you for the rest of your life. And so you better have a game plan for one with what you're gonna do with that. But does your lifestyle support this
Hmm.
major adjustment in your cash flow?
Right.
So
Right.
you always want to act as if you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow and the business needs to continue to run without you.
Hmm. Exactly. And if not, how many of them are thinking about building a business instead that they want to stay in forever? Because that's also the alternative, right? And
It's a great way to put it.
yeah, so it's how do you live in this mindset of being able to, if you needed to, sell it tomorrow,
Yep.
but loving it because of the health of it, because you're in your true, unique core area of genius and freedom that you want to run it forever.
I
How
love it.
can how can one find that healthy ground? How do you find that? Is that
Yeah.
is that what you're ultimately after? I mean, you go into this experienced, well knowledge, day one, how we scale. Do you see an exit for yourself? And how do you feel in all of that? And how do you sit in this place and balance of this is actually a business I could stay in forever because I enjoy it. I love it. And
Yeah. I think
it's good.
when everybody gets an itch to want to sell, it's because they have reached a point that they're not loving the business anymore.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. they're miserable.
Yeah. And so generally that's your first sign that you need to just audit like what you're actually doing and start to offload or delegate some of those things. I think you would call it as an EOS person, like I would delegate to elevate, right? I need to get
Hmm.
out of this stuff that's
Yeah.
bogging me down. Now, there's no way around that. Like if you're starting a company from scratch, like you're going to
Right.
be the worker bee and you're going to be the COO and the CEO and the CFO and the business owner all at one time. You don't
Yep.
really get to experience any of the joys of business ownership to start.
Right.
But that's what we talk about going horizontal to go vertical is like you got to be hiring people to get out of it. So for me,
Hmm.
my litmus test for that is I really absolutely am hating or dreading going to work today or going into
Hmm.
the office or going to this meeting or whatever it is. And it's because I genuinely am not confident or good or as capable at doing that as somebody else.
Hmm.
And so I just first I just turn to my team and say, well, who does love this or who is better at this or who does have this talent? I told you my superpower is like seeing things in people that didn't even know they had a skill set in, and then figuring out how to pay them to do it so that I don't have to do it
Yeah.
anymore.
Right.
Sometimes you don't even have to pay them. Sometimes they're just so excited because it's their genius that they get to participate in making that come to life that they'll just
Hmm.
do it for free because they just are excited about it. And for them, it's easy. It doesn't feel like work, right? So this is the whole concept of who, not how, of just
Yeah.
you need to find somebody who, and oftentimes they're right under your nose, who's more
Mm.
excited about doing that stuff that you don't love doing.
Totally. Free would be nice. I haven't found I haven't found
Well, like
that. Like I love what
example,
you're doing so much. But yeah, can you share an example of that?
well, example would be like culture, right? Like building culture and making sure we maintain culture and do things as a
Sure.
team. Like there are
Totally.
people who are just like they love to plan, they'll do the parties, they'll
Mm-hmm.
create the events, and like to them it's just
Mm-hmm.
a form of expression or creativity. And
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I need somebody to
Yeah.
own this thing, right? And
Yeah.
they're like, hey, I'd
So
love to get
somebody in the team already where there's so much ample opportunity to elevate them into roles and involvement, contributing at so much more than just their role itself, but they love it.
and I
Yeah.
think as
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to try to control all that and not let
Yeah.
people step into their genius, not let people be
Yeah.
entrepreneurial within our ecosystem.
Hmm.
Which some people are naturally inclined. Like I'm a guy who's naturally inclined to be, I see a problem, I believe
Mm-hmm.
that I can go fix it. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
go fix it or come to you with the plan to fix it. I'm not gonna wait for permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
people do, your employees do need that permission. Remember, you're the exception, you're not the rule. You're the entrepreneur, they're not. But they can have entrepreneurial tendencies that could actually be very beneficial to you if you just
Right.
open the door for them to go and execute on that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. What advice would you give to those entrepreneurs struggling to let go, to entrust their teams to take on that responsibility without compromising the vision?
First person you lead is yourself.
Mm.
And you have to rigorously audit your own skill, your own
Mm-hmm.
talent. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Like one of the fundamental flaws you see for entrepreneurs is like, well, I've always done the sales, so I'm just going to keep doing the sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, even if you hired two more salespeople who were 80% what you were, that's still 160% more sales, right?
Yeah.
And so we just don't take enough time to look in the mirror, internalize honestly where we're good, where we're bad, where we're strong, where we're
Yeah.
weak. And I
Right.
think it's a byproduct of when you first start out on an idea, you're trying to like, it's armor, right? You're just trying to knock away all the negativity because if you let it in, it can overwhelm you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, block it out, execute. But at a certain point, you have to self audit, and that armor can become a negative thing, right?
Yeah.
Because anything and everything that somebody says is like, oh, you're the smartest person in the room. Nobody could ever be better at that than you can, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
pretty soon the team's believing it and then you believe it and then you're self-sabotaging at that point. It becomes
yeah.
self-sabotage.
And I've seen it go toxic the other way, right?
Oh,
Where
yes.
you got
Yeah.
a bunch of people in the room that are on your leadership board
Just all
and
looking at you, and you're the
and
one,
yes, we call it the yes man
the yes
problem.
people. Yeah,
Yep.
everyone's like, whatever they say,
Yep.
whatever you tell us.
And if you're constantly getting knocked down with your idea that somebody's bringing to the table, eventually they go, I guess I just work here. I'm not really
Mm-hmm.
bought into the vision. I'm just here to
Mm,
collect a paycheck. And so,
yep.
yep, whatever you want. I guess, you write the check. So, right, I'll go execute on that. And so that
So
can be
much
hard.
wasted potential.
Oh my gosh. And I've seen it. It backfires, right?
Yeah, it does.
And it takes getting kicked in the head pretty hard for you to recover from it and learn from it.
Yeah,
So don't let that be you.
exactly. Well, Samson, thank you so much. If people want to learn more about you, Clearly Acquired, and how you can help, where's the best place for them to find resources and get in
So
touch?
LinkedIn is where I'm the most active. Samson Jagoras. There's only one of those out there. I won't be hard to find. And then you can head over to clearlyacquired.com where you can set up a free account and get started into our ecosystem if you are interested in buying a business, or you're a broker or you're a seller considering selling a business.
Yeah. When's the software officially
So we yeah we
launched live?
we are in MVP right now, and so we
Okay.
have an actual product. We will have a couple hundred listings on the marketplace by the end of next week,
Wow.
and so kind of the next leg of this is just optimizing the software to
Okay.
make it our lender tech just that much better. Because
Yeah.
right now there's still some manual components built into it, which is how you build software, right? You build the antiquated version first, and then you go automate everything.
Iterate on everything. Yes.
Exactly.
Such a vital resource. I'm excited to see it. And thank you so much for your insight, your wisdom.
You bet. Thanks
Joy
for
to have
having
you.
me.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening.